Hello, thank you for coming back to my channel. I'm going to be discussing chapter 7 from Absalom by William Faulkner. This is the biggest chapter, and in this chapter we get to learn more about Sutpin's life, his journey as perhaps a hero, a tragic hero. We learn where he comes from and the true reason of what motivates him to become a plantation owner. And that is, so when he was young, he was born in West Virginia, and I believe his mother passed away, and his father took his whole family to migrate west. Times pass, he can't even tell whether it's months or years, and he even loses count of his age since so much time has passed. And they eventually settle somewhere somewhat, but they're poor and they work for a plantation owner, and his father is an alcoholic. And you start to see the dynamic of the social statuses between the poor white people, the slaves, and the slave owners. And there's a lot of tension between the poor white families versus the slaves, resentment because of the society, the economic society that was built up by slavery. There's a whole passage that I feel like describes how capitalism was developed, and Sutpin as a child had no idea that this system even existed. He couldn't even wrap his head around it as a child, because what do you mean there's people that put your socks on for you? Something you should be doing as an adult yourself. What do you mean you can get objects, stuff that's, not more, how did he say it, like not within your reach, not within your necessities. So as a child, Sutpin first learning of the whole economic system of slavery was mind blown, like anybody would, to even use other people to get yourself rich. But his surroundings shows this tension that's developed between different social groups, and he experiences it firsthand, and he can't comprehend it yet because he's still young. But his father orders him to deliver a message to the plantation owner, and he's met with the slave of the house, and the slave rejects him, quote unquote rejects him, tells him you can't enter from the front house, you have to use the back door. And Sutpin feels stuff from this and is resentful towards the plantation owner, and he thinks about killing him, shooting him, but he isn't sure what the correct thing to do is, and he just sits there thinking, what am I supposed to do with this? Something is not right, something is not fair. And this child, 14-year-old child, decides that I will become the plantation owner myself. If you can't beat them, you gotta be them, or whatever that saying is. So he leaves his family, he leaves everything behind to become a plantation owner. And he picked up that from somewhere that if you go to the West Indies, you'll become rich real quick. So he goes there, doesn't give much detail. And he's telling all this to Quentin's grandfather when many years later, when they're trying to find the French architect that escaped in the night because he didn't want to help Sutpin out anymore. And Quentin's grandfather is helping Sutpin, and while they're trying to find him, this is where Sutpin tells Quentin's grandfather his whole life story. So yes, Sutpin lets Quentin's grandfather know that he decides to just go to West Indies, and he doesn't give any details on how he did that, but he does at 14 years old, and he learns the ins and outs of becoming a plantation owner, and he learns the French language there, and then he develops this idea of how to become this perfect plantation owner, and that he calls the design. So he has this big plan, his ideal plan, and the first step is to have a foundation within the family. So he has to find the ideal woman to marry, and so he finds one. He marries her, and she gives birth to a boy. Everything's all well until he finds out that she is actually mixed. So he cannot become his perfect design because she does not align to the qualifications. She's mixed. And so he abandons them. He leaves them behind and comes back and tries again. And that's where he finds Ellen, and he marries her and has 2 children and makes his Sutpin's 100 with the slaves that he brought from West Indies. And so round 2, his design is going well until he finds out that his daughter is engaged to this man named Charles Bond, which is the same name as the son he had back in West Indies or wherever. And so this must be stopped. It's gonna corrupt his design again. Some speculate that perhaps he manipulated Henry. He knew Henry would take charge and deal with it, and that's how it happened. He let Henry kill his oldest son to deal with the interruption towards his perfect design to his plantation. But of course, now that son has run away. Now he's committed murder, and he has to start over again. And that's where he looks at Rosa and says, possibly you can bore me a son. Maybe we should try that first before we get married, to make sure the design actually goes smoothly this time. And Miss Rose is like, no way, and she leaves. And then the 4th child comes up, which is Wash's granddaughter, who is only 15 years old. Sutpin 60 or something, 50 or something. And then we find out that Sutpin, so that grandchild gives birth to a child, and we find out that it's not a boy. And once Sutpin finds out that it's not a boy, he says, where is it? Well, Millie, too bad you're not a mare too. Then I could give you a decent stall in the stable. This is after he finds out that she gave birth to a daughter, not a son, which does not align to his design. So she is just a horse to him, just a mare to him. And Wash, the grandfather of Millie, overhears this, and up until then, Wash praised, kissed his feet, Supin. He believed Supin was the perfect man and almost biblical man. He's the perfect man in Wash's eyes. And it kind of resonates with Miss Rosa to me, on how she's also not the main character, just like Wash. And they kind of live through these people. Rosa lives through Judith, of her able to court with Charles Bond and fall in love and perhaps marry, get engaged. She'll never get to do that, so she lives through it. Same way John Wash does the same with Supin, this man that's successful. He owns the plantation. He's made it compared to himself, and it's a pleasure to both of them to watch them, and it's they're proud of them, and so they kind of put them on a pedestal. I mean, I don't know about Miss Rosa, but Wash puts Supin on a pedestal, and he was ignoring, even accepting, allowing that his granddaughter was pregnant with his child, up until he threw them away once he saw that they're not qualified to his design. And that makes him snap, or perhaps reality hits, makes him realize, talking about Wash, makes him realize that he is never going to be Supin's level. He is always going to be the poor white man, that poor white child that Supin originally was, that child that contemplated killing the plantation owner at that moment when he was turned away from the slave to enter the mansion. And John Wash also is turned away by Clyde, saying, you can't come into the kitchen. And John Wash is pretty much the same person that Supin originally was. But Supin figured out how to become that successful plantation owner, but John Wash did not. And so that reality hits that, wow, this is all we are. And he believes that Supin and Supin's kind and his kind must die, so he kills Supin, and he kills his granddaughter, he kills the baby, and then he kills, well, he doesn't kill himself, but he runs out into the policemen that are barricading his home and gets shot by them. And so that is the end of Supin's life, and the tragic hero journey that he starts from the beginning to the end of his life, of him dealing with something he wants to change within his life as a child. The drunken father rebels to the drunken father, changes his own life, goes on a journey, learns things, and becomes successful with his goals, and then he dies from it, killed in the end. And so we really see this side of Supin, and compared to Rosa, who annoyed me with her comments towards Clyde or her behavior, it was hard to see clearly. I mean, we know he's horrible, he's an evil with his plantation and everything. But it's I don't know, for me it was not as direct as the emotions I felt from Rosa's behavior. I think because she is actually a character within this book, but Sutpin is actually not, because he is a character told by another character, told by many characters, and he is actually not really, he doesn't really have a voice through the direct narrator. He's told through the characters. So he's like this phenomenon all the time, and we get a glimpse of him from different people, and these parts are put together to figure out who this person is. So he's like a legacy, he's like a legend, and yeah, and we don't, and this whole chapter kind of is structured in that way of his journey from beginning to the end, and his determination. He's set out to do something, and he achieves it, and it's he doesn't let anything get in his way. He uses people, not use people, but abuses people for him to obtain this design that he's so compulsive, obsessed about. And he doesn't let anything stop him until he's killed. So it's a different feeling from a direct character like Rosa and her behaviors versus Sutpin, which is, not as direct, and he's not he's like a layered character, because the main narration isn't presenting him. He's presented through characters already. So I think that's where it gets interesting from this book, on why, like, whether, of course we hate him, but like, who is this person, like why is it understandable in a way? I'm not sure if it's understandable, but like a little more than compared to someone like Rosa or other characters. And that's where it makes it interesting, because Sutpin is the main story. This book is about Sutpin, but he's such a mystery still. But yeah, I think I'm gonna go over, so I'm gonna stop right here. I hope I covered everything. Yeah, okay. Thank you, bye.